Sacred Space.
So welcome back again to the second part of Sacred Space. My name is Joe Healy, still joined in studio here by Michael Keating. Actually in Nottingham in the UK, Donal Foley, who's the Secretary of the World Apostolate of Fatima, England and Wales, and Shane Ambrose, they're somewhere in Scotland, and myself and Michael are here in the Sacred Space studio, the Come and See studio here in Ardagh, County Limerick and Ireland. So Michael, you might start us off with this little talk we're going to have about Fatima this morning.
Well, John, next Friday, the 13th of October, is a very special day. It's the centenary of the final apparition of Fatima, and the centenary of what's known as the miracle of the sun. Mm-hmm. Probably one of the greatest miracles of nature since the time of our Lord, since the time of Moses in the burning bush. Mm-hmm. And just a tiny bit of background. In the July apparition, Lucia, prompted by the Spirit, she said to Our Lady, "I would like to ask you to tell us who you are and to work a miracle so that everybody will believe that you are appearing to us." And Our Lady said, "In October, I will tell you who I am and what I want, and I will perform a miracle for all to see and believe." So this miracle, John, was for us to believe that Our Lady was appearing, the message of Fatima. Not just for the people in 1917, it's still for the people in 2017. So you can imagine when the children spread this news.
Yeah.
Word spread around Portugal, and it caused consternation, especially with the authorities.
Oh, yeah.
And you see, at first the authorities did everything in their power to stop people going to Fatima. And then they came up with a very brainy idea. They said, look, we'll let the people go to Fatima. There'll be no miracle, and that will be the end of Fatima. So they changed their tack for the 13th of October. And in the days leading up to the 13th of October, it started to rain. I mean, we get rain, John, but this rain, Francis Johnson said in one of his books, he said, it pierced the marrow of their bones, he said.
Oh, that's a good description.
So you can imagine what it was like.
It was wet.
People started walking to Fatima for days beforehand. And of course, this still goes on today. Not in the scale that it did up along the years now, but people still do walk in pilgrimage to Fatima today. And of course, they were mocked at along the road, they were jeered at. Now, some people helped them out and gave them food. But the estimate is that 70,000 people arrived in the COVID area for the 13th of October. Now, we go to a big game here, John, a hurling match above in Crow Park, which is 70,000, 80,000. But there's every facility under the sun there. But this was the side of a hill, a muddy hillside. The mud was up to their ankles, and there were no facilities whatsoever. That was the scene for the miracle of the sun. So Lucia's mother was distraught. She said there'd be no miracle. She'd never again see her daughter. She thought she'd be lynched by the crowd and killed. The authorities were there. The press was there from all over Portugal. And so at noon, Our Lady always appeared at noon. Lucia quickly pointed to the sun. And the sun spun around in its axis. 3 times it emitted multicoloured lights. It came down on top of the people. 3 times. People thought that at the end of the world, some went to the church, they tried to hide, that more confessed their sins out loud. And but after the miracle, the ground was completely dry. People were miraculously healed. And every paper in Portugal, if Alman, had pictures of the crowd. And you can still see those pictures in the museums and all today. You know, this happened, very close to our time, John. This is not something that happened, thousands of years ago. No. And but it was for all to believe, Our Lady said. And then, of course, she said who she was. I am the Lady of the Rosary, she said. Isn't it a beautiful title? At each apparition, she had asked them to say the Rosary, and especially in the war. World War I was raging at the time. Now she gives herself the title, Our Lady of the Rosary. And, of course, she said she wanted a church built in her honour. And, of course, that's the Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary now in Fatima. And of course, we also have the title of Queen of the Most Holy Rosary in the litanies, all this.
Yeah.
So that's very quick what happened on the 13th of October. And, after that, of course, no matter what the authorities, they couldn't stop the people going to Fatima. The bishop tried to stop it, everyone tried to stop it, because when you're working against God, you can't stop something like that.
No.
So, but that's a very quick thing for the 13th of October, just to remind people what next Friday is all about. And, if people have a chance, get on TW2 look at the devotions there from Fatima next week. They will be absolutely spectacular. Yeah. But Donal, you might like to come in and give a lot more detail now, a deeper understanding of the whole thing.
Well, I can, yes, thanks. I can sort of talk a bit about the World Apostolate, which is what I'm part of. That, that just might be your listeners would probably perhaps know better as the Blue Army, because
yes.
it was originally founded in the United States, Monsignor Colgan and John Hafford, but it was the Blue Army of Our Lady against the Red Army of Communism. Then that was the sort of the because Russia is obviously mentioned in the Fatima, particularly in the July apparition. So, but that anyway, it was the Blue Army. Then the name was changed to the World Apostolate that was due to Pope St. John Paul II. So really, the World Apostolate is trying to promote. It's the official church-approved Fatima organisation. So, and obviously they're quite strong, in Ireland and in Britain. So we're trying to promote the Fatima message as well as we can, especially now as it's a centenary year. So that's really what we're about. That's the sort of the gist of what we're doing, as it were, Michael.
And so, Donal, what do you reckon yourself is the message of Fatima for ourselves these days?
Well, the thing is, it's got so many aspects. Obviously, if you like, the core message, I would say, is this idea of Our Lady saying that God wanted to spread devotion to her Immaculate Heart throughout the world. So that is the sort of essence of it. It's meant to be this worldwide movement, if you like, of devotion to Our Lady, which obviously involves things like the rosary, the 5 First Saturdays, and generally a greater devotion to Our Lady, because that's when the church has had that devotion. It's been strong, I was saying, for example, in the Middle Ages with all the cathedrals. But then more specifically, I think, if you look through the Sister Lucia's memoirs, for example, which is probably the basic book, with the details of the apparitions. So that's Fatima and Lucia's own words, which is not that difficult to obtain. That there, I mean, if you look through what's actually Our Lady saying, particularly, I think each apparition, Our Lady was saying, pray the Rosary every day, pray the Rosary to bring about peace and the end of the war. And as Michael was saying there about at the end, she said, "I'm a Lady of the Rosary." So she actually took a name from the Rosary. So there's obviously a huge emphasis in Fatima, in the Fatima message, if you like, on the Rosary. And one of the things I talk about, I'm doing my various talks, is about the sort of incidents in history where the Rosary has really changed history. You've got things like the Battle of Lepanto, which now we've got coming up, Feast of the Holy Rosary on it's around this time of year. And, it's commemorating this great victory. And the one I mention when I'm talking is Austria after the war, when they had a Rosary Crusade, which got 10% of the people praying the Rosary. And as a result of that, the Russians who were occupying Austria after the war they announced they were leaving on the 13th of May, 1955, which was the Fatima anniversary day. Whereas in Czechoslovakia and Hungary, they when there were attempted revolutions, they put them down. So the Rosary is incredibly powerful. That's one aspect. Also, I think the 5 First Saturdays devotion, that really needs to be promoted, because that's tied in with the conversion of Russia and the time of peace that Our Lady promised during the July apparition. She said, "In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph, and there will be a period of peace for the world." So there's all other things as well, obviously, the Eucharistic reparation, and but I think that to my mind, those would be the core elements, really.
Yeah, and I suppose the thing about the Rosary, when people hear about the Rosary, some people just think to Our Fathers and Hail Marys. When Our Lady appeared to Lucy in the convent asking for the 5 First Saturdays, she asked her specifically to meditate for 15 minutes on the mysteries of the Rosary. And that changes the Rosary when you're meditating on the life, death and resurrection of Christ. And St. Dominic, when he was preaching against the Albigensian heresy, again Our Lady appeared to him and she told him, to meditate on the mysteries of our salvation. And St. Dominic, of course, we attribute a lot to getting the Rosary going. And of course, afterwards in Rome in 1571, October the 7th, which is the feast of Our Lady of the Rosary, it changed the whole battle. The Pope and the people of Rome praying together there. But we need to, I suppose, we're always rushing to say the Rosary.
Yeah.
Everything nowadays is rush. But if we could just spend that little bit of time meditating, or have a little scripture reading up in front of us, where we can put our mind in the scripture, it really makes the rosary very powerful, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lovely tradition in this country anyway. I've said the rosary either before Mass or maybe even after Mass. People mightn't be saying the rosary in the family as much as they were before, but I mean, there's people who usually carry a rosary with them in their pockets. And again, this whole idea about meditation.
And I suppose, especially for peace, Our Lady, the Pope, before the apparitions in Fatima, the week before, the Pope asked the public to seek Our Lady's intercession in World War I. 8 days later, Our Lady appeared and she said, pray the rosary to end the war. And we have a lot of threats of nuclear war today between Korea and the US and all this. If we pray the rosary, we will be safe and there'll be no war. We need to get enough people praying it against it.
We need to be reminded of that. And of course, Donal, the children's detention and the children's experiences there in the Fatima story really reminds us all how Mary and Jesus love the simple things in life, or the simple people, i.e. children. Maybe you might mention something about that, about the children's.
Yeah, it's a really an interesting and strange thing, that their children were kidnapped in the August apparition, or time just before that, and the people who actually turned up on the day, on the 13th, did see the cloud coming down, and they realised Our Lady had come, but obviously the children weren't there; they'd been taken away. And then she appeared then to them, a few days later in near their village of Algestrel, a place called Alinos. But it's interesting. I mean, I was just thinking about this today. That they were taken away by the local sort of rem, which is 8 or 9 miles away, and detained there. And they were threatened with being boiled in oil if they didn't tell the secret, because Our Lady had given to the children the secret in 3 parts in July, the previous month. And then the first part was the vision of hell. The second part was all the sort of talking about coming back, the 5 first Saturdays and so on. And the third part was the secret that was revealed in the year 2000, with the Pope going up the hill and being killed with his followers. But what I thought was, if you think about it, if you've ever splashed oil, when cooking oil on your hand, it really hurts.
It does.
Imagine you put into a vat of that, a boiling oil, and killed that way. So the children, in only a few months, they went from being ordinary children to being young people prepared to die an absolutely awful death. So that, to me, that shows the power of the message and the the sheer grace that was sort of poured into their souls, if you like, to make them so strong in the faith. And which obviously goes back then to the year before, when the angel of Portugal appeared to them and prepared them for their encounter with Our Lady, with told them various prayers, and then they were given Holy Communion by the angel. And of course, there's an element of Eucharistic adoration comes into that, because the angel bowed down before the host and the chalice, which was suspended in the air. So it just shows that the children really were martyrs by intention. So they certainly deserve to be saints just for that. Yeah. Incredible.
I remember, John, a few years ago, with Father Peter Budden in Fatima. He said, Our Lady came to Fatima in 1917. He said, and she never left. He said, I thought it was beautiful. She's still there. And everything you see in Fatima today has its origin back in 1917. The people walking to Fatima, the people on their knees, going down their knees, people saying the rosary, especially in the Basilica. I think it's something's not used enough. The 15 beautiful altars in honour of all the 15 decades of the rosary inside the Rosary Basilica. You've probably seen them, John.
Yeah.
And that all goes back to 1917. And I often wonder how many rosaries are said in Fatima every day. It's hard to imagine. Yeah. It's every night there you have a massive crowd, and all day long there are people saying the rosary there and interceding. They're not just saying it like for their own intentions. They're interceding for the world, interceding for sinners. And of course that was the big message of Fatima: pray for the conversion of sinners.
Yeah. And
in the July apparition, Our Lady said, many souls go to hell because there is nobody to pray and make sacrifices for them. And Because that's an indictment on us. It's up to us to pray for them.
Yeah.
Sorry, Donald, did I cut across?
No, I was going to say we've lost that whole thing of sacrifice, really, haven't we? Society's become too soft, I suppose. But certainly, when I first went to Fatima just over 30 years ago on a walking pilgrimage, and that sort of really changed my life. But as you were saying, then people were a lot of people were walking there and they were camping out, whereas now it's obviously it's sort of not as tough a thing as it was.
The motorways came in, of course, and changed everything. But
yeah.
I remember 1987, I went to Fatima first, and to see all the people sleeping under the trees, it would just bring tears to your eyes. Whole families, children, all after walking to Fatima. And so you can imagine that in 1917 they were mocked, they suffered humiliation going to, but they had faith. They believed there was going to be a miracle.
Faith was the one.
Yeah, faith is the one that sustains them. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there'll be listeners just maybe want you to expand maybe, and you mentioned secrets there. The first secret and the second secret. Just remind us again about the first secret again, Michael. Or don't know.
See, it was all basically one message, because we obviously had these three secrets, but because children that was shown hell, which was caused great consternation altogether. A lot of people still dispute that today. Why did Our Lady show children, small children, a vision of hell? The reality of hell and heaven. It is real. We must believe in it, John.
And so you pray for sinners. So
you pray for them. Yeah, she said she would return and to ask for the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart. And imagine those little children talking about Russia. They were never outside their own village. So where did they get all this? They got it from heaven. And of course, Saint Pope John Paul II did consecrate Russia in union with all the bishops of the world. And that's when communism started to fall. And of course, another big sign in Fatima is you go in one gate, you see a section of the Berlin Wall, a symbol of communism, right there inside it. So nothing's impossible to God. And of course, the third secret of Fatima caused all the trouble. For years and years, there was books written on it and all this. And Donal mentioned it there. And basically, it's a vision of a bishop dressed in white, walking to the cross, and past the bodies of all the people martyred for the faith. And then he falls to the ground under a hail of bullets and arrows. Am I right, Donal, now explaining that?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
It's a symbolic vision, of course, but the Pope, St. Pope John Paul II, said it referred to his assassination attempt on the 13th of May in 1981. And he said that Our Lady's hand saved his life, guided the bullet and saved his life because he should have been killed. But the bullet was deflected. And of course now the bullet is in Our Lady's crown in heaven, and or in Fatima, and that's brought out on the 13th of the month, every month.
Donal, we have 2 or 3 minutes left on this particular section. Fatima, what would you like people to hear this morning, or take away this morning from this particular reminder that the 13th of October is a special day in Fatima and for ourselves?
Well, yeah, I think first of all I would say to people to try and get hold of a copy of Sister Lucia's memoirs and some of the Fatima books if they don't have them. I mean, a good book is Father Apostoli's book, Fatima for Today. That's really comprehensive, and it deals with all the different aspects. I think, I mean, if I get a chance, because we've been going around with the statue and the relics around England, so it's been a bit hectic to all the different cathedrals. So that's been very tiring. But I think the thing about Fatima is, say if you compare it to Lourdes, Fatima is a sort of like a desert type quality about it. The sun, the space. So I think we need to get back to the sort of simplicity that the children's lives, and really start to, as if we were living in the time almost, and say, right, we're going to really get back to the basics and really say the rosary, do the things that Our Lady was asking. And I think if we do that, we'll, as a society and the church, we'll sort of gradually build back up again. But the other thing I would say, I think what we really need is a sort of rosary crusade type of action, as they had in Austria. This idea of getting people together to pray the rosary, because as Michael was saying there, all the people praying the rosary in Fatima. If you read St. Louis de Montfort's book, The Secret of the Rosary, he says that when people pray the rosary together, it has a sort of multiplying effect. So if I say it on my own, that's just me. If it's 10 people, it's as if I'd said 10 rosaries. So if we got everyone, say in Britain and Ireland, praying the rosary for a renewal of society, all the Catholics at least anyway, then, I think that would be a big way we could change things, definitely.
That's a good proposal. Michael, what would you like to say just to finish off?
I suppose, John, I'd love to finish maybe with the prayer of the angel at Fatima. And we think of all those people out there today who are struggling to find Jesus, and maybe don't know what they're missing in their lives. And we'll just pray that for them. My God, I believe, I adore, I hope, and I love you. I ask pardon for those who do not believe, do not hope, do not adore, and do not love you.
Thank you so much for that, Michael. So at this stage now we might go for a second piece of music, and this one, the Fatima hymn, I know is people like it in the Portuguese version, but I said I'd play a little bit of the English translation this morning. So they say this.
In Fatima's cove on the 13th of May, the Virgin Maria appeared at midday. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. The Virgin Maria, surrounded by light, God's mother is ours, for she gives us this sight. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. The world was then suffering from war, plague, and strife, and Portugal mourned for her great loss of life. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. To 3 shepherd children the Virgin then spoke a message so hopeful, with peace for all folk. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. With sweet mother's pleading, she asked us to pray, do penance, be modest, the rosary each day. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. All Portugal heard what God's mother did say. Converted, it sings of that queen to this day. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. So all must remember Our Lady's request. Do all that she asks for, obey her bequests. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria.
Sacred Space,